Let's talk to a man who we spoke to this time yesterday, who predicted a Donald Trump victory. Will he be proven to be correct? Dr. Sebastian Gorka is an advisor to President Donald Trump and host of the America First podcast. Good morning to you, Sebastian.
Good morning, Julia. Great to be back.
Well, absolutely fascinating. You were certainly right that this was not going to be a clear walk in the park for the Democrats. The vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, she tweeted yesterday, "We got this." That may come back to haunt her, mayn't it?
Yes, indeed. We were told for months, Julia, by the mainstream media, the legacy media, and by the Democrat Party that this was going to be a tsunami for the Democrats. That this would be a tidal wave, and by 10:30 it would be over, and we'd have a new president. That is not the case. There is still everything to play for. Pennsylvania, so crooked. Pennsylvania decided at 9:30 at night, we're just going to stop counting votes and we'll get back to you tomorrow. So the president is about to speak from the White House, but still everything to play for, Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know of those key battleground states. Joe Biden has a number of different routes to make it through. He can win one state and lose another. He can do this, do that. President Trump is more reliant on, he can't lose a lot of the key states he won in 2016. He's got a rather more narrow route. But the key vote that happened early on when we got the results was Florida. If that had been a really clear Biden victory, that would pretty much have meant game over for Donald Trump. And that was certainly not the case when Donald Trump has been predicted, to win Florida. We've still got a load of postal ballots. We've still got lots more to come in terms of voting. But that Florida win, that wasn't a surprise for you, presumably.
No, Florida was absolutely necessary for the president. Pennsylvania is likewise a key state. The strange thing is that when you get, for example, Fox News very early on in the evening say, well, Biden's got Virginia when there's still 800,000 votes left to count. And they said, well, it's okay. We've combined the actual votes that we have counted and can count with our exit polls. I'm sorry. Exit polls are irrelevant. It's the votes that matter. So we can't win without Florida. The president's got it, but we have to get those votes counted as soon as possible, because the longer we leave it, the longer the possibility for some kind of shenanigans.
And this is an issue. And whether it's shenanigans or whether it's, as Donald Trump says, stealing the votes, or end up some sort of a virtual civil war. We know that Americans have been buying guns at a rate of knots, partly because of the Black Lives Matter protests, partly because they're just not sure what is going to happen. There's fears on all sides that an unclear situation that stretches on for days, as it may well do now, or weeks, even if it goes through the courts all the way to the Supreme Court, could lead to violence on the streets. A lot of people are very fearful. We're not going to see that peaceful transition of power that many would hope for.
And with good reason. If you look at the events of the last 10 months in Democrat-held cities, in Democrat states, whether it's Portland, whether it's Oregon, we've seen outrageous violence. We've seen $3 billion worth of damage done in looting, in arson. We've seen 30 people murdered in the riots since George Floyd was killed. Almost half of them are actually Black Americans. So, yes, where Democrats are in control, law enforcement has disappeared. And as a result, the American people are living with their Second Amendment rights, which is, we see it as a civil right to be able to arm yourself and to protect yourself. And as such, we have seen record sales of firearms every month for the last 6 months.
What do you put the Trump vote down to? Whether he wins or loses in the end, the fact that he has managed to get such a big vote and win places like Florida, given that we've got the coronavirus pandemic, one of the highest per capita death tolls in the world, the mass unemployment, tens of millions of Americans unemployed, economy tanked as a result of the lockdown. What do you actually, I'm going to have to leave that there, because we are just seeing some of Donald Trump's team, I think, arriving in the White House for Donald Trump to make a statement. Sebastian Gorka, actually, no, just in case before he does come on, we will cut through if he does. But just what do you put it down to? How has he managed to garner the votes he has garnered when America has had so many problems this year?
Because he's still trusted. We had a 34% growth in the GDP in just the last quarter, which is record keeping, not just for America, but for any nation. And on top of that, it's like Brexit. once the American people voted against the establishment and voted for a man who'd never run for public office before, you don't go back. Once you've gone anti-establishment, you stick anti-establishment. On top of that, we've seen incredible figures with his popularity amongst the Hispanic voters, with a trifold increase in his popularity amongst the Black Americans. So he's breaking the political mores of the past and creating a new political landscape. And it's an exciting time to be an American.
Do you think a lot of this has been about the culture wars and
Yes.
it's about these, so not just Black Lives Matter, but the whole, obsessions with diversity and trans and all of this, that actually an awful lot of Middle America, not just whites, Middle America, Blacks, Hispanics and others have just gone enough already?
Well, of course. And, when you have the Cato Institute, which isn't exactly a pro-Trump organization, it's our libertarian think tank in D.C., do a big survey 3 months ago, and they find out that 62% of Americans, Julia, especially if they're conservatives, are afraid to publicly talk about their political convictions, lest they be cancelled, lest they be penalized or punished or lose their job. That's the reality of the political correctness, which is out of control. As far as I'm concerned, is the child of refugees from a communist country. Political correctness is the latest form of censorship, and it's indicative of totalitarian thinking. So people have had enough, whether it's having guys say, "Oh, I'm a woman today," which is of course absurdity, or whether it's people saying, "Well, if you're white, you're inherently racist." Americans have had enough of that insanity.
Just finally, as we wait for Donald Trump to come to the podium, tell me, who do you think's going to win? If you said yesterday, Donald Trump. It's on a knife edge right now. If you have to call it, who's going to win?
If there isn't cheating in the vote counting, then the president will be re-elected.
Okay. Sebastian Gorka, I really appreciate you joining us, advisor to President Donald Trump, host of the America First podcast. We are still waiting for Donald Trump to appear on that podium, set up in the White House. He's got the presidential seal, of course, on the podium waiting for him, and he's got a whole bank of American flags behind him. He's going to make a statement. Of course, Joe Biden spoke earlier. Let's talk to Darren Grimes now. He's director of Reason to UK. He's been joining me all this morning. Darren, it's fascinating. Whenever we talk to Trump supporters like Seb Gorka and others, they will always talk about these sort of talking points that Donald Trump has been using for months now. This talk about stealing the election. They're still talking about that. Does that suggest to you that they're not as confident as they're pretending to be?
I certainly think that some people are predicting actually that it could be a dead heat and that there could be, a complete tie, and that would just be the most 2020 thing ever, wouldn't it? But listen, I think they can have a little bit of confidence, because I was just looking, and yesterday YouGov predicted with 95% confidence, they say, that Biden would get 382 electoral college votes. He's not going to get anywhere near that. And 270 is the number that you need, let's not forget. You just look at everything that was predicted. Democrats are going to win the Senate. Some confidently predicted he would win all three branches of power. They're not going to do that and be able to pack the Supreme Court and all of these things. Love him or loathe him, Julia, you can't count Donald Trump out. Absolutely not. And this is in the backdrop of America burning and the pandemic ruining the economy. This is a result that shouldn't have happened, essentially.
Absolutely. I mean, it is extraordinary. It's a very tight race. There's no question at all. And again, we're going to see Joe Biden winning the popular vote. Hillary Clinton, of course, did that. She won by over 2.5% more votes than Donald Trump did in 2016. But as we may have noticed, hasn't been in the White House for the last 4 years. It's the Electoral College that matters. And this is the key thing, is that Americans don't actually vote directly for who they want to be president and vice president on that ticket. They vote for electors who are members of the Electoral College, and then they back their choice of candidate. And of course, the key thing there is which state you live in, because each state has a number of electors depending on their population. So to give an example, of course, California, biggest state, 55 votes in Electoral College, representing 40 million people. North Dakota hasn't even got a population of 1 million, and they've got just 3 votes in that Electoral College. So a lot of it comes down to winning those big states. And it's interesting how many of those battleground states, key battleground states, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Wisconsin, a lot of those are the states that do have an awful lot of those Electoral College votes, which are absolutely vital. And of course, we know the first candidate to 270 Electoral College votes wins the presidency. The key thing is there are nearly always, it comes down to maximum 12 states which make the difference. But it is fascinating in some of the states which the Democrats thought, Darren, that they were absolutely surefire, no question at all they would win, that they haven't been winning. And Donald Trump has been able to hold on to some of the states which it was thought that he just managed to grab from Hillary Clinton in 2016, but he's managed to keep hold of them this time round.
Because I think there's in the same way, Julia, that we saw that result in 2019 in December in our own country, where Labour were completely decimated. And I think it's taken the working class for granted, much like the Labour Party did. The Democrats lost that vote because for far too long they'd assumed that the vote was in the bag, whilst they pandered to, metropolitan liberals in Washington and elsewhere. And even if Biden, does manage to scrape this, he'll know that he can't, and the Democrats will know, they can't take the working class for granted anymore. And that can only be a good thing in my eyes.
Absolutely.